Hare Krishna, everyone, and welcome back once again to our ongoing series on the glories of our most beloved Sri Vrindavan Dham. Namo Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Pashtaya Bhutale Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namane Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pacharane Nivishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarane. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. So we're continuing our series on Stimulation for Ecstatic Love, and this will be part 89. And today we will shine light on the ghanta, which is also a musical instrument used in kirtan, because we've been discussing musical instruments. In Sanskrit, the word ghanta is often used to indicate bells, but in Bengal and in Vrindavan proper, the word ghanta can also indicate a gong, meaning, it's described, a circular brass or bronze plate which has a hook to tie a thread on top of it for holding and is played by striking it with a wooden hammer or sometimes a thick wooden stick. Now, the Bengali dictionary called Shabd Kosh describes the gong or the ghanta as a percussion instrument consisting of a metal plate that is struck with a soft-headed drumstick. Then it gives the synonym as bells, so interchangeable. So the word ghanta can be used to describe bells or a percussion instrument consisting of a metal plate that is struck with a soft-headed drumstick. So we will discuss the ghanta in that context today, referring to it as a gong, as we do in ISKCON, a gong. Now we often hear of such a ghanta or a gong in the pastimes of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. The poet Rasika Kishore, who lived around the time of Narottam Das Thakur, Shyamananda, and Srinivasacharya, he wrote, Ghanana Ghanana Meg Bhanti, Ghanta Bhaji Mridanga Sati. A ghanta sounds like the thundering of the clouds, Ghanana Ghanana, when it is played along with the mridanga. So originally in the Havelis, which means the home-style temples in Vrindavan, there wasn't the culture of making a dome on top of the temple, as was, or you could say, still traditional in India. This is because, it's an historic thing, because during the Mughal period in India, the Mughal period lasted several hundred years, such domes on tops of temples, Hindu temples, attracted the attention of invaders who would demolish and loot the temple. Yeah. So the Brajabasis decided to make temples to look more like houses in the shape of, they call them havelis. Havelis is like a house, which is temple. So these structures were often built with an oval-shaped hollow arch on top and a heavy iron hook where these large ghantas or gongs were hung. It's really interesting, isn't it? These old and heavy metal ghantas can still be seen on top of havelis, or even temples, specifically at Radhakund. I know of one at a Manipur king's temple named Radha Govinda Mandir, where we often do katha and kirtan during our Kartik parikramas. There are also such ghantas or gongs at the Radharaman temple, and the Radha Gokulananda temple, and the Radha Ballabha temple, and the Radha Shyamasundar temple in Vrindavan proper. If you look carefully, you'll see those big gongs. Now in olden days, a devotee would stand on top of the temple and hit the ghanta, hit the gong with a large wooden hammer after every hour of the day. This helped describe the pujaris, those taking care of the deities, or doing temple activities to follow the strict time standards of service of the Lord in the temple. And similar to this, I was thinking a tradition was established by our Srila Prabhupada at our Krishna Balaram Mandir temple in Vrindavan. As many of you know, he established a place at the entrance of the temple where a large bell rings every hour. Not a ghanta as we're discussing today, but a bell. But previously in Vrindavan, these gongs were used in the same way. And the poet Surdas, one of our favorite poets, mentions such a gong in one of his poems, describing Nandishvara Hill, where Krishna lived at Nandagram. He wrote, "O dear friend, look at the mountain of gold, Sri Nandishvara, which stands high and straight, with the beautiful white palace on its peak. With countless stairs reaching the throne of Maharaj Nanda. In his courtyard there are thousands of gopis who roam and play along with Krishna and Balaram. The servants stand on high raised arches and play ghantas, which resonate with bliss in the hearts of the residents of Braj. The sound of churning thousands of butter pots complement the sound of these ghantas. Surdas prays to the lifter of Mount Giriraj to make him a servant at these doorsteps of Nandagram." So gongs. And another of my favorite poets, Vyas Das, he describes this ghanta or this gong being used in Vrindavan very beautifully in a poem that he wrote as follows. "O Saki, do you hear the sound of the ghanta? The cowherd boys are returning from the pasture grounds, taking their cows back to the Goshala. They are all playing loud ghantas, along with bugles, horns, dundubi, big drums, and conchas. And Krishna is playing his flute. The sound of the ghanta makes my heart excited to see Krishna coming home. The sound of the ghanta is like tiny droplets falling into the Jamuna river. The ankle bells of Goddess Saraswati, the sound of claps of playing gopis, and the heartbeat of the Queen of Vrindavan Dham." Vyasadas says, "O Saki, life is too short. We should run to see the Avani procession of Krishna coming home." Wow. But historically, the playing of these ghantas or gongs was not only reserved for temples, because as we know, Gaudiya Vaishnavas, Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu brought them out from the temples onto the streets and to the villages of Bengal. And during his kirtans, thousands of devotees used to dance to the beats of the mridangas and the ghantas, the gongs. Holding the gong in one hand, devotees would hit it with a stick in the other hand, making a beautiful loud sound which you could say reverberated and balanced the kirtan. A medieval poet named Giridhari wrote as follows. I really love this one. "The army of Mahaprabhu is attacking the kingdom of Maya. With burning torchlights in their hands, countless yet meaningful beats of the kol, mridanga, and devotees leading the procession playing ghantas. The kirtan is most blissful. In the middle of this procession, the incarnation of mercy himself, Shri Gaurasundar, is dancing with one hand up and the other down. His associates are diving deep into the ocean of bliss and love while staring at his incomparable beauty." The poet Giridhari says, accompanied by the sounds of hulu hulu, or I don't know how to say it, the traditional sounds of the Bengali women, I sing the glories of Harinam day and night. I sing the glories of Harinam day and night, as we should. Now Vrindavan Das Thakur also mentions the use of these ghantas or gongs in Chaitanya Bhagavat, Ancha Khanda chapter 4, while describing a festival taking place at the home of Advaitacharya. He writes, everywhere the devotees were very busy. Some were spreading multicolored cloth awnings overhead and tying the corners to nails. Others hurried to bring vegetables, oil, and so on to the kitchen. Many devotees began kirtan and dancing, and some joined in playing the gong. Some joined in by playing the gong and blowing conch shells. The devotees were jubilant, loudly chanting Hari Hari, while they enthusiastically performed their various services. The festival mood had everyone in a grip, and happy tumult echoed everywhere. The loud chanting of the holy names, the blowing of conches, and the sounds of cymbals, gongs, and drums transformed the house of Sri Advaita into Vaikuntha. Well, these poets. And Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur also describes the ghanta, the gong, in the pastimes of Lord Chaitanya in his famous Gitavali, Arati Kirtan, Song 2, which we sing in the evening time. Shanka Bhaje, Ghanta Bhaje, Bhaje Karatala, Madhura Mridanga Bhaje Parama Rasala. Conch shells resound, guntas resound, kartals ring, and the mridangas play very sweetly in that kirtan, so melodious and relishable to hear. So melodious and relishable to hear. Evening arti. And even today, in Jagannath Puri, we see that when Lord Jagannath comes out from his temple each year for the Rath Yatra festival, a large group of pandits or priests play hundreds of ghantas or gongs. Actually, it's been going on for thousands of years. And I've been several times to that Rath Yatra in Puri. It usually happens in our summertime here in Europe. But as Jagannath comes out, there's long rows of priests, boom, boom, playing these gongs very loudly. It's overwhelming. And in Andhra Pradesh, at the Sri Rangam and Tirupati temples in South India, there's a ceremony known as Ghanta Nadam, which is, let me remember, it's a 32-minute long event during which a large gong, along with 108 small gongs, or ghantas, are played by the pujaris every evening. Special ceremony. Now, in the temples of Orissa, Bengal, and Braj, there's a tradition of playing ghantas of two different sizes. One smaller in size and another bigger one, both of which have, of course, different sounds. Oral tradition says that during the morning arti, their sounds represent gopis churning yogurt. And during nighttime, these two different sounding ghantas or gongs represent the sound of gopis running towards the place of the rasa dance, having stuffed their ankle bells with the dust of Braj to stop them from making too much sound so that no one will know about their secret meeting with Krishna. They put, Braj dust in their ankle bells. So, following this bhav or this mood, in the Radharaman temple during Shayana Arti, the pujaris tie a cloth around a wooden hammer when playing the ghanta, so that the sound will not be too pronounced. It's in the same mood. Now, as many devotees know, Srila Prabhupada very much liked playing a ghanta or a gong in his kirtans. There are a number of photos, actually, of him doing so. One I remember now with his smiling. He's on the Vyasasana, a big smile on his face. He's playing the gong. And Harishwari, my dear godbrother, writes in his book, Transcendental Diary, Volume 2, that once on Bimal Nirjal Ekadasi, during Guru Puja, Srila Prabhupada played a gong. He writes, The devotees have supplied him a small gold-painted hammer with a decorative jeweled handle. As the kirtan went on today, he tapped the brass cupola-shaped gong, producing a vibrant, hollow tone as it rested against the asan's left front rail. Prabhupada has an elegant way of sitting upright, not slouched, his head tipped slightly up, moving from side to side, in time with the rhythm. His alert eyes and mood of concentration and sobriety give him a distinct regal aspect, yet in his face there is a subtle blend of soft approachability which invites us, one and all. He is our supreme commander, and at the same time, one of the troops. Hariswari is a poet, an ISKCON poet. Thank you, Hariswari Prabhu. Now there's a wonderful pastime of the sound of a gong being played at an historical moment in ISKCON's history. Yes, at a historical moment in ISKCON's history. My dear godbrother Guru Das describes it in his book, By His Example. It's the title of his book, writing about his times with Srila Prabhupada. By His Example. I read that book, it's wonderful. If you can get it, you would just appreciate so much how Guru Das writes about Srila Prabhupada. Now this historical moment happened in 1971 when the devotees in London were recording a record album entitled The Radha Krishna Temple with the help of George Harrison of the Beatles. And the album was actually recorded at the same recording studio where the Beatles recorded their famous album. I think it was called Abbey Road. Yeah, Abbey Road. And the devotees album, the Radha Krishna Temple, was later released on the Beatles' Apple Record label. And one of the recordings was entitled the Hare Krishna Mantra. So Guru Das writes in his book, so nice, historical moment. The recording went well with Yamuna and Shyamasundar leading and our backup rhythms supportive but not overpowering. After George laid down a beautiful harmonium and guitar introduction, he wanted a large chorus. So adding myself, Janaki, and Mukunda, he rounded up the secretaries, janitors, accountants, mailroom employees, switchboard operators, and executives, and taught them the Hare Krishna mantra. They were our chorus, and the chanting built up nicely in tempo and volume to a wonderful crescendo that ended with Malati clanging a hanging brass gong. Our collective hearts stopped because the clang sounded out of time. We hadn't rehearsed it. We thought we'd have to do the whole recording over. But George was calm, and Mal Evans, the roadie, didn't move a muscle. George then led us back into the engineering booth for a listen. I sat next to George as he put the earphones on. As we listened, the mantra sprang forth, sounding fantastic and inspiring. George began sliding the levers up and down, adjusting sounds on the various tracks. Paul and Linda McCarthy then came into the booth, but we hardly noticed them as we were intensely waiting for the clang at the end. Once again, our chanting came to a crescendo climax, and the gong was perfect in its timing and added a nice, conclusive, exotic ending. It sounded great to me. The particular song was the chanting of the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra, and if you listen, Malati, boom, if he plays that gong at the right time. He goes on, George called us back to the control booth to listen. The mantra rang out purely and joyously. I was completely encouraged and excited at the holy sounds we had rendered. Linda and Paul too were nodding with the beat and smiling. They indicated that they liked the sound and soon were singing along. Historic moment. Because that album, believe me, I remember at that time, that album was produced in England and became very popular. It became one of the hits actually in England itself with the Hare Krishna mantra, and at the end, boom, all glories to Malati Dasi. I would like to finish today with a beautiful quote from Hari Bhakti Vilas, 8th Vilas, verses 311, 311 and 312. Again, the Sanskrit's quite long, so we'll just quote the verse. O King, please hear now about the benefits one achieves by playing a gong or kartals in the temple of Lord Vishnu. Such a person becomes freed from all sinful reactions, and upon leaving his body, boards a celestial airplane to enjoy life in the association of Lord Vishnu. At that time, all the Gandharvas sing of his glories. Hare Krishna. Thank you for this. The gong. It's been played for a long time, and Srila Prabhupada enjoyed very much playing it in our International Society for Krishna Consciousness. I don't see devotees play it so often, but perhaps after this lecture, it'll become more prominent in our ISKCON society, because we see Mahaprabhu's kirtans, the original kirtans. Mahaprabhu played those gongs, specifically the small ones with the wooden handle, and Srila Prabhupada loved it. Hare Krishna. See you next Friday. Shri Shri Gaur Nitai ki, Shri Shri Krishna Balaram ki, Shri Shri Radhashama Sundar ki, Vrindavaneshwari Shrimati Radharani ki, Mayapur Dham ki, Gaur Nitai ki, Shri Krishna Sankirtan Yaga ki, Nitai Gaur Premanandi, Jai Jai Sri Sri Radhe Sham. Glories to Prabhupada. Hare Krishna.